Before we begin this video, we just want to speak about our new partnership with the mobile sports app called Locker. Locker is a new sports app whose mission it is to centralize premium sports content and put the power in the hands of fans to personalize their world of sport from sources they love and trust. It's recently launched and is available in UK and Irish app stores. It's free to download and it's great for football fans. So ahead of the internationals, give it a download and let us know what you think. We will be announcing more about this partnership in the coming weeks, but you can list your favourite club, whether it's in the Premier League, whether it's in the Scottish League, whether it's in League of Ireland, and you can have all your stuff listed in a feed designated to you, and you can get push notifications as well to your club. So check it out, it's free to download and the link is in the bio. Hello and welcome to Irish Football Fan TV. I'm delighted to be joined by Hamish from 67hailhail.com. And we've obviously linked up before when Liam Scales signed for Celtic. Here we are again to get the opposition preview. Hamish, how are you keeping?
I'm good, Paul. Yes, good to be on, mate. Looking forward to the game on Saturday, even more so after last night's result from our point of view.
Yeah, well, I suppose we're obviously coming into this game, yous have won. We were kind of coming into it on a bit of a high from the last time we played you guys and we had a decent result against Ukraine. But I think that's kind of thrown out the window a little bit now off the back of, the result last night. So we're here to kind of get the lowdown from yourself. But just before we get that, do you want to tell people just about your channel, where they can find you, and especially like Celtic fans or Irish fans in general, so they can find you and subscribe to you?
Yeah, so I do 67 Hail Hail YouTube channel. We've got a website that another group of guys run really well, I must say, and I do the YouTube section. I'm on pretty much every video chatting about Celtic. We try and bring out daily videos, actually. We've got interviews, we do solo videos, we've got former Celtic players involved in the channel as well, match reactions, match previews, all that stuff. So if you're a Celtic fan, I would say we'll keep this to Celtic fans, because if you're not a Celtic fan, you may not enjoy the channel quite as much, but you can just search for 67 Hail Hail and you'll see this handsome face looking back at you.
Sorry, the mute button went broke on me. But yeah, go and check out 67 Hail Hail after, of course, we do this video. But Hamish, coming into this game, how are you feeling? Are you confident? Are you apprehensive? Or what way do you feel? Because were those games of the summer just a blip, and you're back, or is it just too hard to say? Or are you just too inconsistent? What is your thoughts?
It's just such a weird thing, international football, because you've not really got the week to week stuff. So going into last night's game, Scotland were very much in a pretty kind of poor place, I would say. I mean, the atmosphere last night for the majority of the game at Hampden probably told its own story. I think if you went back a couple of months prior to the last game against Ukraine, our crucial World Cup qualifier, we were in a great place. We'd just won, I think, our last 6 matches of the qualification group for the World Cup. We'd beaten Denmark, we'd beaten Israel, we'd gone to Austria and won. Really good results. And we were going into that playoff against Ukraine with home advantage, and Wales waiting in the final, and the country was in a really good place with regards to football. People were wanting to see the team play. The game against Ukraine sold out in almost record time, I think. And then that game was just a complete disaster. We just didn't show up at all. They beat us convincingly. In fact, 3-1 was probably flattering to us, to be honest. And that just kind of put everyone back down again, and not feeling nearly as good about the national team. I think that's always been the criticism of this Steve Clarke team, is that even when they get good results, there's another bad result around the corner. And as much as he's achieved a lot as manager of Scotland, you look at the really big moments, and the team perhaps haven't done themselves justice, like at Euro 2020, when I think we should have done much better than getting 1 point from 3 matches, especially with 2 at Hampden, and the Ukraine qualifier. So it's a long way of saying that we're in a good place, we then went into a bad place, and we're now seemingly after last night in a bit of a better place. But it's one game, and I was pleased with last night. We were great, really, really good performance. But if we don't, take 4 points from the next couple of matches, or at least finish the group on top, then last night was pretty worthless, to be honest. That's certainly how I feel.
Yeah, I think it's kind of similar to where we're coming in off the back of, before we played yous, and then we obviously got the good result, and then all of a sudden everything was rosy again after losing to Armenia, losing to Ukraine, playing yous, and then getting a draw against Ukraine. And I think it's been a bit like that for Stephen Kenny as well. It's like anytime he loses a game or we don't beat like an Azerbaijan or we draw with Azerbaijan, it's like sack the manager. He's not good enough. But when we win a game, he's the messiah. He's the best thing in the world. Just such as the life of fickle football fans. But when you kind of look at it, we're coming into this game, and it's kind of one of those where we don't know, should we be optimistic playing yous? I don't know if you guys are feeling optimistic playing us. I mean, we don't really have any kind of superstars. There's no one really on our team that's or in our squad even that's coming into this on really hot form, or there's no one really doing amazing in the Premier League or anything like that. So, is there anyone that you would actually be looking at and be fearful of us before we kind of come on to the Scottish players?
Well, obviously, the kind of obvious thing to do would be to look back at the last game in Dublin, and that was a horror afternoon slash evening for us that day. We just didn't turn up at all, and Ireland, to their credit, were great, and everything at Ireland seemed to hit went into the back of the net, and I think it was Obafemi who scored a cracker that day, and probably him and Parrott as well, the kind of two attacking players would be the two from the last game that caused us so many difficulties. But James McLean is another one you'd probably look at that we're kind of quite familiar with. And yeah, I mean, the Ireland team, when you actually look at it, player for player, it isn't as strong as the Scotland team, I would say. But as we found out, in the last game, it's all about turning up on the day, especially in these kind of almost international derby matches, if you call them that. Is very much about who turns up and wins that first challenge and kind of controls the game from that point. I do remember, just thinking back, I've tried to erase that Dublin game from my memory, but I do remember us getting some opportunities early on in the game from Shane Duffy, especially trying to play out. Obviously, I'm quite aware of Shane Duffy didn't have a great time at Celtic at all. So I do wonder, if that could be something we could exploit if the likes of Duffy are playing on Saturday. I'm not actually sure about Ireland's injury news or anything like that, so you'll know better than me. But we did press Ukraine very well last night, and at times Ukraine looked completely rattled trying to play out from the back. They didn't look like the same team that we'd played a couple of months earlier. I know they were missing a few players, but we really, really rattled them last night at Hampden by pressing them. And I could see similar happening on Saturday with Ireland, especially if it's players like Duffy and Egan at the back.
Yeah, I think there's only been one or two injury concerns that I don't think any of them have been defenders, like other than Androm Bamadelli, who pulled out. Liam Scales, funny enough, who we actually did the video on, is in the squad. But I'm kind of looking at it, and we don't really have any kind of major injury concerns for the first time in a while. Duffy more than likely will play. It's going to be interesting to see what actual defence he goes with, because Duffy hasn't been playing at Fulham. But he more or less, between himself and Seamus Coleman, are generally the captains. If he dropped the two of them, John Egan would probably be the captain. But he's kind of lucky in that sense that so many of our defenders are actually captains, more or less, at their clubs, like even Darragh O'Shea at West Brom now as well. So that's our best general area, is our centre back positions. We're quite solid in those positions. Unfortunately, not that blessed up front, and I think we just got a sprinkle of magic on that day in the Aviva, and I know you want to kind of raise that, but just from your own point of view, looking at your squad, Andy Robinson's missing. I think I saw a tweet. I think it was from you last night saying you're a better team without him anyway.
I must say that was a bit of a joke. There was a wee punchline right at the end of that tweet. That a lot of folk have been reading that, and I've been getting pelters for it. So it was more just my love for Greg Taylor, but I do think there's a conversation to be had there about Robertson.
Okay. Well, just I suppose from your point of view, Nathan Patterson went off injured last night. He's going to be a huge blow for you guys. I'm an Everton fan, so he's been excellent so far this season. Started the season really, really well. So I was sad to see him go off, but from an Irish point of view, probably a bit more at ease, kind of knowing that he won't be playing against us. So what's your general consensus, and who are the key players that Ireland should be looking out for?
I'll come on to key players in a wee second. I mean, just on the right back stuff, Patterson's obviously been doing really well for Everton. Started really well last night as well. Then seemed to kind of jar his knee, making a kind of forwards challenge in terms of trying to get the ball back high up in the pitch from Ukraine, just like I was talking about a minute ago. And as I say, jarred his knee and was stretchered off. So, seems like a kind of lengthy one for him. 100% he'll be out of Saturday. Aaron Hickey came on, former Hearts player, went to Italy, now with Brentford in England, and he was excellent. For me, I know we don't tend to give man of the match awards to players who have come on as a sub, but I think he was right up there last night for the job he did on Mikhailo Mudryk, who's probably Ukraine's best player. And again had a decent game last night in spells, but Hickey did a really good job on him. So I don't actually think there's much between Patterson and Hickey, and I actually don't think Anthony Ralston, who's probably our third choice, is too far behind them either. So I don't see Patterson not being available as a massive blow. Yeah, I mean, Scotland played a slightly different formation last night. We played 4 at the back when we've tended to play 5 for basically as long as I can remember under Steve Clarke. I think basically because Robertson wasn't available, we were kind of forced into it. Kieran Tierney at left back with Hendry and McKenna in the middle, and it just seemed to work, really, really well. Tierney was excellent on that left side, which I think has led loads of people to have this feeling that, yeah, Andy Robertson's this amazing player and he's been so good for Liverpool for years, and in terms of Scottish players and what he's achieved, he's probably right up there in terms of the last 20, 30 years. But are we a stronger team with him in or out of the team, and are we a stronger team with Kieran Tierney at left back rather than him? And I think there's a fair argument that we are, based on last night. I thought Tierney was brilliant. So for me, Kieran Tierney would be a key player tomorrow night. I know that's unfashionable being a left back, but he's so involved in the game. He has the ability to go down the wing, direct run, and he also has a really good kind of diagonal pass on him to a Lyndon Dykes or a Stuart Armstrong or someone like that. So he's a key player. McTominay was one of our better players last night, and John McGinn obviously is an obvious guy worth talking about as well. He scored the opening goal when it looked like we weren't going to find a way to score. We'd missed so many good chances, and McGinn popped up as he often does with goals. He scored so many big goals for us over the last 3 years. So he would be a key player to be looking at as well. There were so many of them last night. I mean, Callum McGregor had a solid game. Che Adams did well, but the one problem with Che Adams is he doesn't tend to score many goals, and I just wonder if Dykes will maybe start on Saturday, given that he came on and scored a double, both from corners. As I say, McTominay was good. The subs that came on, offered something as well. So Scotland are going into this game in a really good place, is what I'm saying. And I just think, I'm assuming Saturday night against Ireland, Hampden's going to be pretty full, if not sold out on Saturday. And I think it could be, with maybe a bit of revenge in our minds as well, it could be a really tough game for you guys.
Yeah, well, kind of the more you talk about it, the more kind of I am actually more skeptical. I was kind of coming into this, and I did a podcast with some Scots there. I think it was the Scottish Football Show it was called, the other day, and they were kind of coming into this really worried that Scotland weren't going to show up and this and that, and this was obviously before the Ukraine game. So I think the Ukraine games kind of put a spanner in the works for everybody, because I think Scottish fans who were pessimistic are now optimistic, and now Irish fans are kind of like very weary of, that Scotland are coming into this on good form. They've got a good win against a good side under their belts, and I think it kind of comes back to that thing again. It's like a derby game, although there is good blood and there is kind of good. A good atmosphere and everything that between the Scottish fans and the Irish fans, and there's no real hatred towards each other. But I think, on the pitch there is that, that battle that has to be won, and I do think in the midfield we won that battle in the Aviva. And I think that came down to making a couple of changes in midfield, like taking Jeff Hendrick out and putting Jason Malumbi in, who loves getting stuck in and getting involved. Whereas I think the same thing could be said for this one. It could be one in the midfield, but then again, you've got, as you said, players like Kieran Tierney and Hickey coming in there, who maybe Irish fans wouldn't be. Well, obviously they'll be familiar with Tierney, but not so familiar with Hickey. Callum McGregor, we obviously know how good he can be as well when he wants to be, and Lyndon Dykes. I don't know too much about him. He took his goal as well. There seems to be a bit of hype about him now at the minute. Che Adams, he kind of reminds me of Callum Robinson in a way. It's like sometimes he'll turn up and score. More often than not, he's just kind of just a handful for the opposition.
Yeah, that's the one thing we're really lacking in our team is a real, prolific forward who can take our chances. I mean, the chances we created last night in the second half, there was a spell of I think 5 or 6 minutes when we could have scored 4 or 5 goals. Armstrong had a header, had a shot straight at the keeper. He then had a header where he just had to be braver and he would have scored. Shea Adams then had 2 in about 15 seconds. Both of them should have been goals, both headers. One hits the bar, one saved by the keeper, and it felt like one of those nights. It was almost getting to kind of the point when everyone was just kind of laughing at how unfortunate it was Scotland hadn't scored. So people might look at that score last night and see the minutes of the goals. I think it was 70, 80, 87 and think, oh, you got a bit fortunate there. 3-0 probably flatters you. 3-0 did not flatter Scotland last night. The chances that we had, we should have scored 4 or 5 at least. I think we had over 20 shots against a decent Ukraine side last night. So I think if it's that Scotland that turn up on Saturday, I think it'll be a really tough game for Ireland, but yeah, it has to be that Scotland again. When you go back to that game in Dublin, as I said earlier, we had just lost to Ukraine, and I think that it felt as if those kind of we'd gone from being so close to qualifying for a World Cup, 180 minutes away from doing that, to then just back to the Nations League and looking miles away from even getting to a playoff. Whereas I feel now,
like a bit of a little hangover maybe from the
it was
Ukraine
yeah.
game.
I mean, it was a bit of a kind of after show that wasn't very good, and all the emotion that Ukraine game had taken out of the team, the support, you could feel that. And I'm not taking away from Ireland's performance that day because you were great, but we really did struggle that day, I think, to get ourselves up for that one for whatever reason. Whereas now I look at it and we're realistically a really good position. We could go into the game on Saturday knowing that a victory guarantees us top in the group. If Ukraine drop points in the earlier game, I think they're away to Armenia. If that was to happen, we'd have the chance to top the group on Saturday night. That obviously means, a playoff at bare minimum for the upcoming Euros in Germany. It means we'd be promoted to Division A of the Nations League, potentially give us a chance to qualify for the 2028 Euros as well. So it's a big week for Scotland. It's a big opportunity over these next 2 games, and that's what I said at the start. Last night can't just be a one-off result and then we kind of fall short again. We have to see this one through. 2 draws does it for us, which is an interesting thing. I think one of my pals said somewhere that 3 points doesn't guarantee us top in the group, because we could beat Ireland and then lose to Ukraine and finish second. But if we get 2 points, we're guaranteed to top the group, which is a weird kind of scenario. But I think 3 points on Saturday, and then you go into the game it's not in Ukraine, the game in Poland, knowing that if you avoid defeat, you've topped the group.
Yeah, but I suppose there's a lot to take in there. It's going to come down to it on Saturday, but usually what I do is I usually end on a prediction, how you're kind of feeling. You can do head over heart or or vice versa, or both, whatever you want to do.
It's difficult. Lots of Irish family, so I don't want to upset them too much. But equally, I need to stay strong here. I do think Scotland will win. I don't think it will be as one sided as last night's game was, or the game in Dublin was. I'll go for a kind of 2-1 Scotland victory.
I think most Irish fans usually going to go for our famous 1-1 draw, or 1-1-all win. They seem to call it whenever we draw 1-1, because a lot of the time it feels like a win. But I think either a draw or a win for you guys is optimistic then for the Ukraine game. But I think we'll be just looking to end the Nations League with 2 wins. I think that's in an ideal scenario. That's what we need to do. I think for Stephen Kenny's sake, Ireland need to win the next 2 games. Otherwise, fans are going to be on his back as well. So there is that kind of added pressure of that too. And I'm from being in the press conferences this week, the Irish lads are prepared for revenge from the Scottish team. So they know that the Scots will be coming out all guns blazing, trying to get the result. So listen, may the best team win. Again, I might just get you to call out your socials and tell people where they can follow you before I let you go.
Yeah, well, I'm on Twitter at Hamish Carton, and 67 Hail Hail. Yeah, thanks for that. 67 Hail Hail is on Twitter as well. We are at 67 Hail Hail, and check out the YouTube as well.
Got there on you again. Well, listen, Hamish, thanks very much for your time. And I'm going to be over there. I know you're not going to actually be in Scotland, but we'll keep that hush hush. Thanks very much for your time. Don't forget to subscribe to Hamish's channel. It's very good. And as he mentioned, he has ex-Celtic players and so on there on the channel regularly as well, contributing. So check him out. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And Hamish, may the best team win on Saturday. I will speak to you soon.